Welcome in. We just had the draft lottery today. The Atlanta Hawks jump up from the 10th best odds to get the number one pick. I believe a 3% chance. They land it. I mean, I think them landing this probably saved this general core staying in Atlanta, specifically Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. I think it's a good reason now to keep these two together because they're not, super young players, especially Murray. Um, but they're young enough to where I feel like you can bring in a rookie here and he can somewhat be on their timeline. Um, in this video, I'll be going over the draft lottery only. Not going to be doing trades here, but I will mention spots where I think trades can happen. We're going to start with the Hawks here, and I'm gonna go with the boring pick, the consensus pick, Alex Sarr. I'll explain it here. We'll see what they do with Capella. I think he's a very interesting trade piece. I think he'll have some attention around the league. Um, don't know how many teams will love the contract, but there's teams with cap space that could bring him in. But I think Sar is the pretty easy choice for me right now for him. He's an elite rim protecting big. And he has shown a lot of flashes as being, a shot maker, a scorer off the bounce, even at points. Um, there needs to be improvement with his rim finishing. He didn't shoot very well at the rim. He could get stronger there. But overall, I think it's a really nice floor that Sar brings because of his amazing defensive ability. I think you're talking about somebody who's going to be an all NBA defender, and I can say that confidently. He's not at the level as, obviously what Victor Wembanyama was, but another French prospect going number one overall this year. I mean, he's got some shooting touch, he's got some handle. Overall, I really love the defense. He didn't start this year in his pro league because he's playing behind an all NBL big, but he led the team in shot blocking. I usually tend to give players a lot of credit who are playing in pro leagues at young ages and they're producing winning minutes. And he did just that. He was a very important, player for his pro team this year. I think that stuff matters, and he's going to be the first overall pick to the Atlanta Hawks. Um, I'm going to mention this trade here with them. I I think this could happen on draft night. Not exactly sure when, but I did make this up as something that, the Hawks are going to have to cut cap. And this is the best way I can see the Hawks, you know, getting cap space because they're less than $10 million away from the second apron after drafting Sar. So there's going to have to be a point where you cut cap. I think this is a perfect way to do it, where you cut over $20 million for the next 3 years and you get a second round pick as well. For the Pistons perspective here of getting Hunter, I think this is awesome for them because of the amount of cap space they have. There's not many free agents in the market that are gonna, they're not gonna get Paul George, and I don't think they should want him. You know, and I don't think they should want to get DeMar DeRozan either. So it's not really a superstar that this team can get. Not that a superstar would really want to come to Detroit right now, but finally with this, the Pistons could get a 3 and D wing. That's just a little side thing that I wanted to throw in that I thought was interesting. But there goes Sar, number one overall. Then the Wizards. The Wizards getting this pick is huge for them. Obviously, number one would have been better because I think Sar would have been really good for them as well because they really need a center. And it's not just that, but they need really good defenders because it's a really bad defensive team. Saying that though, I'm going to take a guy who doesn't really project as a great defender. But he's, in my opinion, I think this would be the pick. I would probably take this too if I were them. I'm taking Nikola Topic right here. I think he's a really legit offensive engine and distributor. I think he plays with pace super well as a downhill attacker. He's a big point guard. I think they need somebody, you know, in the future that can just distribute for others at a really high level. I think it's a legit question if the team will retain Tyus Jones. And overall, I like Tyus Jones a lot, but I think he's more of a like more of the best backup point guard in the league. I think you can do better than him at your starting guard position. And ideally, the Wizards could get a defender at this spot and maybe a front court piece. But when you look at the options on the list here, I'm not a big Zachary Wissache fan for them because they, you know, they need somebody who can create offense for others. And I think Ricochet, he's more of somebody who needs offense to be created for him. I don't think that's a good situation because the Wizards don't really have a lot of guys that can create offense for others. I think Topic brings that in. But yeah, just a good long-term point guard. I think his floor is pretty safe. I think he has great basketball IQ. And man, he produced a lot for his pro team this year. Another guy that I give a lot of credit doing that for. Up with pick 3, the Houston Rockets. I said I'm not making trades. I'm still not going to make trades, but this is a pick where I would potentially try to make a trade back with the Houston Rockets. Um, the Houston Rockets line in this pick is awesome for them, but I mean, they have so many tier 2 and tier 3 like talents on this roster, and I'll explain what that means here. They have so many guys that I think could be second or third or even fourth options on really good teams, and they just don't have the number 1 guy in my opinion. There's not a guy on this roster where I look at and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I can kind of confidently say that's a top 10 player in the NBA at some point." I think the closest I am to saying that to a player is Alperen Şengün, and wouldn't completely rule that out for him. It's not impossible, but I think that's really improbable. Uh, Şengün is a premier all-star at some point, but I think you need somebody better than him if you want to win a championship at some point because, you have to have a top 10 player in the league at least to win a title. You can't have anything less than that. Um, but here, assuming they keep the pick, I'm going to go with Zachary Ricochet. I did say I'm lower on him here, but this is a great, 3 and D type prospect with athleticism. Again, do question the upside here with him because of his lack of shot creation. But I think the floor is pretty nice. Again, another guy produced. I mean, it's funny. These top 3 picks played, overseas, which is kind of the direction the NBA kind of seems to be heading with international players. But he's a really big wing forward that can shoot the crap out of the ball. Hasn't shot as well down the stretch of the season, but he's an 18-year-old that's played like 60 games in the last like 6 months or whatever. So I think that's kind of taking a toll on him, which maybe you can, has that as a question going forward because 82 games in an NBA season, but he's had a lot on his shoulders at a young age. There's going to be less on his shoulders on the NBA. And I think his floor in general is pretty safe because I think he's going to be a good defender and I think he's going to shoot the 3 ball well. So I think he's going to be a winning basketball player in general. I think that's something the Rockets would love to have. I do question the upside, but, I think he could be a Keegan Murray type player. And I think at pick 3 in this draft, if you can get a Keegan Murray type player, that's awesome. At number 4, there's a few options you can go here. I mean, you could honestly go all over the place with all of these picks. In my opinion, the only one so far that I'm like set in stone with is Sar. Like their picks, I could go, you know, multiple other directions. But here with the Spurs, I'm going to take potentially their point guard of the future in Rob Dillingham. Just an amazing, amazing offensive talent, amazing shot creator, 3-level scorer, gets to the rim. Very, very flashy offensive piece. A lot of defensive questions for him, and completely understandable if the Spurs were not interested in him because of his defense. But the reason why like the Spurs feel like the perfect destination to me for him out of all the bad teams here, in the top 5-ish, because I think when you have Victor Wembanyama playing behind you, who's going to be an all perennial defensive player of the year winner, I think he's going to have at minimum 3 defensive player of the year wins in his career. Probably closer to 5, honestly. Like like by himself, Wembanyama is going to make the Spurs probably an average defense at worst next year. I think it's a great place for him to develop. The Spurs are great at developing talent. I think if he can become an average defender, that's amazing because when I look at Rob Dillingham and watch his offensive talent, I look at he just feels like a guy who is a potential 20 plus point per game guy in the NBA and a top 3 option on a great team. I do like with this current Spurs roster, I think they need to figure out their hierarchy behind Wembanyama because while I like some prospects here, I definitely don't think Keldon Johnson's a top 3 option on a championship team. I think he's more of a 5th option. I think Johnson's more of like a great 6th man. And then Devin Vassell, can he be a 3rd option? We'll see. as he continues to develop. Um, I, you know, he's a really talented scorer, but I think Rob Dillingham has the potential to even be the best scorer on this team, and that's something the Spurs could really use. At 5, the Pistons, yeah, kind of got screwed. I mean, this just shows you why tanking doesn't always work in the NBA. Worst record 2 years in a row, and both years they end up with the 5th overall pick. Now, last year that hurt them a lot more than it's gonna hurt them this year because honestly, the difference between the Pistons getting the 2nd overall pick and the 5th overall pick isn't that big of a difference to me and who they're gonna draft. Now, I think if they got the 2nd overall pick, I think they probably would have tried to trade back to 5 even because you look at the top players in this draft. I mean, they could have just taken a guy at 2, but you would probably want to get the lower salary slot at 5 and try to, figure that out because you look at the top prospects, in my opinion, assuming Sarr's off the board. Stefan Castle's my number 2. Haven't taken him yet. He's going to go soon here. But you got him, Ron Holland, Topic. All of them are not good shooters. This Pistons team can absolutely not take a guy who can't shoot. That would be, they can't do it. You have to take a guy who has some sort of touch on the outside and some sort of ability to shoot the 3 ball and space the floor. Like just the ability to even try to do that because their roster is really redundant with really talented young players that just, don't have high upside as shooters right now. And I'm taking Matas Buzelis here. Legit tools to be, a 6'10" wing shooter for them with a really nice handle at his size. That could improve a little bit, but for being a 6'10" guy, I think it's really nice. He's a really nice shot blocker as well, but overall defensively and offensively, a lot of it's going to come down to can he add strength because that's one of his biggest weaknesses right now. He's a very, very light basketball player at 6'10", 208 pounds. He gets bullied at the rim a lot. I mean, he averaged 2 blocks a game in the G League because he's a good athlete. He understands like positionally where he needs to be on the court. He understands being a really good team defender, and I think that's what I think he can be a positive team defender early in the NBA. That's a big reason why I feel better about his floor despite, the raw offense right now because while I think he's got legit shooting tools. He shot 27% from 3 last year with the Ignite, and a lot of those were catch and shoot looks. Now, I think it's just him being raw. I think the form is pretty good in general. Not too concerned about the shot. That's something, pretty legitimate to work, to watch. I mean, the Ignite in general were kind of a disaster. They won 2 games this year, so you can also blame that on that. But he really developed his shot late in his career at Sunrise Christian Academy, and I really like the dribble pass. I mean, not the dribble pass, but the dribble shoot. Hopefully, with some third, like some secondary creation at some point with him. But I think he can be a 2-way defender at some point. Honestly, the range for his outcomes as an NBA player is really wide for me. Um, I think I might be a little lower on him than most. Personally, I don't know where he's gonna be on my board yet. Finally, I think he's gonna be closer to 10 than he is to top 3, is what I would say. I think he's probably around like 7 or 8. But I think he's a guy who could, if the shot works out, and mainly the shot working out, which legit potential to do that. If that works out and he adds strength, I think he can be a premier player from this class. If it doesn't work out, I think he could be out of the league in 4 years. Um, But I guess, I do like the floor a little bit more than I kind of just stated with saying he could be at the league after his rookie deal because of the team defense he brings, and just the overall offensive flashes. But I think this is the best possible pick they could have here at 5 because, like, Reed Shepherd would kind of be the only other guy that I would consider for them. I can't consider anybody else that's not a shooter. They need shooting so bad and spacing on the court because you're about to give Cade Cunningham a max contract, rookie max. I mean, you're setting him up for complete failure if you put him on the court with Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, and whoever bad shooter they draft, and like Jaden Ivey, which is another reason why I hope they do that DeAndre Hunter trade because he's a legit 3-point shooter. All right, The Hornets at 6, this is probably my favorite pick in the draft. This guy's number 2 on my personal board. Um, I would take him higher if I wasn't considering what teams would do. Um, but it's me, Stephon Castle here. I mean, such a talented perimeter defender, huge, huge contributor for the national championship team this season. Very legit secondary creator. Will be great in transition. Hit ahead passes to guys like Brandon Miller. Lacks a jumper right now. Something he can work on. He was hitting like legitimate threes in the national championship in the Final Four. Like they were sagging off him. He was hitting threes in those big games. That gives me maybe some optimism that he can, continue to develop a 3-point shot. But overall, the Hornets need rim protect. I mean, they need rim attackers so badly. Brandon Miller, not known as a rim attacker. He's a 3-point and jumper scorer. LaMelo Ball, not a rim attacker at all. Stephon Castle provides that. They need that. He provides the playmaking. He provides amazing defense next to LaMelo. He provides more security when LaMelo goes down and he can step in as the point guard because LaMelo Ball has had a crazy injury history to this point. He's played as many games as he's missed. So they need some security there. And when when LaMelo's healthy, I think this is an amazing fit on the court because I think Castle can really play to his strengths in Charlotte because they need exactly what he brings to the table. All right. At number 7, with the Trailblazers, another pick. I mean, all these picks, you can go many ways. A guy that I think is better than this positioning, Ron Holland. He's my 4th overall prospect in this class, going 7 here. Very talented athlete who fills the wing position for Portland. I think they need that. Still a question who their core is going forward. Brogdon's definitely not a part of the core. You know, does this team try to move Anfernee Simons? Don't know. Pretty confident Scoot is the guy they're trying to build around. I agree with that. He had a much better second half of the season than first half. I still believe in him being an all-star caliber guard um, within the next 5 years, something like that. Showed some great flashes at the end of the season. DeAndre Ayton really figured it out, but the question with DeAndre Ayton is he figured it out when they weren't playing meaningful basketball. He was awful when they were playing meaningful basketball, when they actually had a chance to do something, even though projectably that Blazers team was never really going to be good. But when he needed to be good, he wasn't. When he didn't need to be good, he was. So that's kind of the thing with DeAndre. I think they keep him because if he can give you what he gave you after the All Star break, that's absolutely amazing. Like that's dang near All Star type stuff that he was giving you with his jumper, with his amazing rebounding, and just he's scoring like 21 a game after the All Star break or whatever. Um, Both Ron Holland, let's get back to actual prospect talk, was one of the best players that the Ignite has produced. Like honestly, statistically, maybe arguably the best like stat performance G League Ignite draftee has produced, you know, in their tenure. As obviously G League Ignite's not gonna be a thing anymore. Thank God, because they didn't know what they were doing with that program. Um, awesome downhill driver, super disruptive defender. That would be awesome for this Portland team. Maybe Portland could start to create some sort of identity with their athleticism because they would have a really good big 3 when it comes to athletes with Holland, Shaden Sharp. Shaden Sharp, one of the best athletes in the NBA. Scoot Henderson, awesome athlete. I think the highlights from those 3 guys would be awesome to watch. His jumper is developing for Holland. He gained a lot of confidence and showed flashes of, you know, hitting threes at a legitimate rate for the G League Ignite, but he didn't shoot a very good percentage. That's developing. We'll see where the shot gets, but I think he can be a win now prospect because of his two-way ability, his transition ability. Just continuing to prioritize, you know, win now players around Scoot Henderson is probably the best route for the Blazers, and I think he provides that. All right, so we're here with the Spurs. This was the Raptors pick, obviously, because it didn't convert. It sounded like the Raptors, wanted the pick this year. I guess that kind of makes sense because Sounds like they want to make a push to being a much better team next year. Um, I like the Raptors. Don't know if that's really going to happen. But with the eighth pick here, going to take a pro bucket getter. This is one of the picks I feel a little less confident in, but you know, with the selection of Rob Dillingham before, I don't feel great about taking another guard. So I'm gonna take Dalton Connect, who again, not ideal taking two guys that are not so great defenders here. You can always go find defenders in free agency right now, but theoretically, Dalton Connect, maybe the best scorer in college basketball last year, just an awesome shot creator. Theoretically, defensively, he could be better in the NBA with his offensive usage being less. I guarantee the Tennessee coaches were telling him to not gamble for steals, and just not be an aggressive defender at all. Because to be honest, this Tennessee team they needed him so badly this year. There was so much on his shoulders, and he just couldn't be in foul trouble. They needed him on the court all the time. Um, Saying that, I don't think he's gonna be a great defender, but I think he's going to be at worst a bucket getter at the NBA level. Um, like he's going to be a great off ball shooter. He's going to be able to create shots to the mid range for you. Like again, the Spurs need to figure out their hierarchy. Maybe Dalton Connect is your elite sixth man going forward. Maybe this pick is, you know, traded away. But I really, really like the offense Connect brings to that team. Filling shooters around Victor Wembanyama seems so important to me. And the Spurs accomplished just that with this draft. Just incredible spacing added, around Victor Wembanyama. I think that would help his offense so much. Now we come up to the easiest pick in the draft, Donovan Clingan to the Grizzlies. He's exactly what they need. He's just what they need. Like, this is a perfect pick if there ever was one. Amazing rim protector, two-time national champ. That's something that I don't know how many people can say that. Um, really nice foot speed and I think passing as well for his size. He has questions with how long he can be on the court for. Like that was a big question with his conditioning before his injury in the season. Then it continued. It got better after the injury. Um, but Memphis won't need him to be on the court that much. I think they're just going to need like 24 minutes a game from him at the beginning of his career. Probably won't close a ton of games for him. But the ideal scenario for Memphis is playing Jaren Jackson at the power forward spot, in my opinion, for you know most of his minutes, and then close games as the center. We'll see what they do with that. But I think this is a pick that I feel like might have. I think the Grizzlies should honestly trade up for him if they feel like he's going to go earlier, unless there's like heavy rumors that he's going to the Rockets at 3, which possible. You know, I think that's a legit. I think that's an option at 3 for the Rockets. I think that's his ceiling. They even the Wizards could take him because of how bad the Wizards defense is. Clingan could help figure that out a little bit. Um, but they will need a ton of play for him. I think Memphis with this pick and just relative health. They don't even need to be that healthy, but just relatively good health from their defenders like Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson, Clingan. Top 3 guaranteed defense with Clingan, in my opinion. They're top 10 last year with all that crap that happened. Like, this is the one team that I'm like, okay, they can maybe contend with Minnesota for being the best defense in the league next year. Still would lean Minnesota, but this is like such an elite defensive team, and that can, help be their identity, just like it is what, for Minnesota. And you still have some elite offensive players and guys like Morant and Bain that can get it done on that end. So at number 10, this was a rough pick. Oh, not a rough pick, actually, now to think about it, because I think you're getting a potential top 5, top 6 talent in the draft in Reed Shepherd, who I'm taking here. You do have, they say severe team need here for point guard. I don't agree. I'm a Keontae George guy. Um, don't know why Chris Dunn's listed above him in the depth chart here, but Questionable future with Colin Sexton. How much longer is he going to be around? Not too worried about him. He's not going to be the reason why I don't take Reed Shepherd because this Jazz team, quite frankly, just needs talent right now, in my opinion. And I don't see many guys that are much better fits in general. I think Shepherd is a two guard, possibly two at the NBA. I mean, he's listed as a shooting guard here. I think he's probably more of a two guard than a point guard, but he kind of draws the short end of the stick here. I think Shepherd could go as high as 3 to Houston. He was probably the guy that, like, if I didn't take Ricochet at 3, I probably would have taken Shepherd. Um, but he's the guy that ends up falling in this class. Every draft in the history of the world is going to have somebody who's a high end prospect that drops farther than where they're projected to go. That's just the nature of it. But he's a very, very smart and talented player. Very smart on both ends. I think he could get targeted defensively because of his size. We'll see how that goes. But wasn't a bad defender by any means at Kentucky. Um, I think he was one of the nation's leader in steals per game. He's an amazing shooter. That's what he's going to bring for sure. Awesome off-ball player. Smart passer, secondary passer. Kentucky was so good with him on the court this year. If you look at the box plus minuses with lineups with him in it, they're almost all positive. And then when he comes off the court, things start to fall apart. I think he's just a really great connective piece and just a winning player in general. All right, number 11, the Bulls, the most directionless team in the NBA. This team needs talent. Like, they should be doing nothing but taking best player available. And in this situation, I think that player is Isaiah Collier. Ideally, Lonzo Ball's healthy, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. I think he would be a great lead guard in the future for Kobe White, letting him play off ball more. I think Collier, he was a guy at the beginning of the year, prospect wise, where we were like, okay, he's a contender to go number 1, and then a little bit of a subpar year for him. USC was a ranked AP team at the start of the year. They end up not being very good. They missed the tournament, finished below 500. Got bounced in the Pac-12 tournament in like round 2 or 3. I can't remember how many games they won there. But this is a dude with legit NBA frame. He's a bulldog, and I think he's got legit NBA guard potential. Had some turnover issues, especially earlier in the season. Started to figure that out. I think that's a real concern, but I do think that's part of the product of playing for a really bad team and just being the guy that has a lot of usage. Awesome downhill scorer. I get that that's less prioritized in the NBA at this point, for guards, but I think he's really good at it and it works, so I don't care. Working on his 3 ball, shot it okay at the beginning of the year. That really fell off. It was never really high usage, but he was shooting over 40% for a little bit. Lots to work on there. But this is a guy that could be a top 5 player in the class for sure. I mean, just the NBA size there, the passing, the scoring in general. Like, this is one of the guys where you can look back and you're like, oh, this guy made like 5 All-Stars. Why did he go 11 to the Bulls? you know, like we saw that in 2013 with Giannis. Obviously, I don't think he's be Giannis, but we see that in a lot of these draft classes that are not considered great with players that you know go in the late lottery and end up being multiple time All Stars. This is a guy that's a legit contender to do something like that, in my opinion. All right, Oklahoma City, kind of a no brainer pick for me here. I guess you go a few ways. I don't think there's, I think there's a few options here, but I think there's an option that makes a lot more sense than the others. And that's Kyle Filipowski out of Duke. I mean, the one thing with this Thunder team that I thought they definitely needed to address the deadline that they didn't, and it could be a reason why that they're going to be bounced potentially in the second round by the Mavericks, is the lack of size of this roster. Like, Chet Holmgren. I love Chet Holmgren. He's not a very bulky guy in general, and I like Jalen Williams, but we can do more than just those two. Like, Kyle Filipowski immediately becomes the biggest player on this roster at 7'1". I wonder what he's weight listed at, 230. I mean, height to weight combination, he's the biggest player on this roster already. He's a legit dribble, pass, shoot big, which is very important in the NBA. He's got upside to do all of that. That makes a lot of sense for the Thunder. I mean, the Thunder sometimes like to take the really raw prospect route, but with the stage of this team, I think it just makes way too much sense to take a guy who can be more win now and produce for you now and actually play a role now in Kyle Filipowski and, potentially be the deciding factor in the elevator between this team, maybe going on in the second round to them going to the conference finals. Don't know. Um, but I like Kyle Filipowski a lot here. I kind of like a lot of these picks. I like another one here with the Kings at 13. And go with Jared McCain, a Duke. So back-to-back Duke players. Very confident they're losing Malik Monk. So the Malik Monk situation, they can't offer him nearly as much as other teams will be able to. The way Malik could stay with the Kings is if he took the similar situation to what Bobby Portis did in Milwaukee. Bobby Portis loved Milwaukee, so he did this. He took a 1+1 second-year player option, took less money in the first year, declined the player option, and got his bird rights. He doesn't have bird rights yet with Sacramento, so the Kings can't match really high offers for him over $20 million, which teams will be offering. So does he love Sacramento enough to take $8 million less? And then it's not just that, but he risks, financial stability and getting a guaranteed 4-year contract right now without having to prove anything else because he's betting on himself with going back to the Kings, which could land him more potential money, but is it worth it if he has a down year or deals with injuries again and lands, even less and ends up making $20 million less because he decided to stay with the Kings? And then plus there's the situation with the Kings, like, does this representation try to tell him, okay, I don't know what the path is to winning a title here. If you want to win a title, you probably go somewhere else. I think there's a legit path to winning a title in the next 4 years with the Magic. The Magic could definitely give him 4 years, 85. Great spot. There's like team like the Pistons could give him 4 years, 85 plus. Like, doesn't make sense for him to stay, in my opinion. But let's get to prospect talk. Kind of went off track there. I just thought that's important because, I think he's gone probably, and that further justifies this pick, in my opinion. But Jared McCain, one of the best shooters in this class, undoubtedly, provides elite spacing for Fox and Sabonis. Very important. Now, definitely a much better shooter than Josh Hart, but he has Josh Hart traits. Kind of a similar frame, especially coming out of college like Josh Hart, but he's instantly going to be one of the better rebounding guards in the league. 6'3". I don't have the stats in front of me. I kind of wish I did. Maybe I can. Oh, no, I do have the stats in front of me. I'm dumb. 5 rebounds a game as a freshman at 6'3". He's going to do the same thing in the NBA. He's a super hustle player. Maybe not day one, 5 rebounds, but by the end of his rookie contract, he's going to be giving you 4 or 5 rebounds a night as a 6'3" guard. That's just that's just what it is. He's rapidly developing as a scorer downhill. He's becoming more than just a 3-point shooter, and that's great for him going forward. I think this is another guy where it's like looking back, I don't know how much all-star upside I see in McCain, but I see a super, super high-end like role player here that we look back and like, man, this guy should have easily been a top 10 pick. Just the overall development, and he was awesome in March Madness for Duke. Awesome when the stage was at its brightest throughout the year. I think this would be a phenomenal pick. Then we go to the last pick of the lottery. Probably try to do a full first round mock in the future. Just sticking with the lottery today though, because kind of hard to think about everything in the first round. I thought it just makes sense to do lottery today. Trailblazers again. Come back on the clock. This is Golden State's pick, which obviously transferred over. Can't remember what that trade was from. Was it the Gary Payton one? I don't know. I don't know if it was or not. Might have been. But I'm going to take legit 3 and D prospect here, Jacoby Walter. I think Cody Williams could make sense. Trying to think who else. I don't hate like a big man here like Edie or Ware or Missy, but projectably, if you want to keep Aiton, you're not trading him or Robert Williams. I think just drafting spacing is so important around Scoot Henderson, who's a non-shooter. Um, Again, the future is kind of questionable for somebody like Simons as well. So you get more security in that guard backcourt position. But just in general, somebody who projects as a good defender and a good shooter just sounds amazing around Scoot Henderson because that's the guy they're clearly trying to build around. So do what you can to maximize his talent, and providing good shooting and defense around him is probably the best way to do that. Um, but yeah, that's the last pick of this lottery. I wrote notes here for SAR. I didn't think that would save, so that's just showing up there. I might try to do that with others in future episodes. Um, yeah, this is the mock draft. Um, there's a lot of scenarios with a lot of these picks. I do in a future mock, I do want to try to take more defensive options for the Spurs, but I'm not mad with what they get here. I like a lot of these picks. Um, Overall, really fun day for the lottery. As a Western Conference Timberwolves fan, very happy a team like the Grizzlies didn't jump up and get number one because man, they could build something special with landing Alex Sarr. Um, Even though they're going to be a lot better with Kling anyways. But just getting two Eastern Conference teams at the top two, even in a weaker class, was fun for me. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you guys in a future episode. This is my first video on this channel. I'm starting to make some content on TikTok, trying to see where this goes. See you guys soon. Peace.